Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today I'll be talking about Jamison Crowder and if the Jets should cut him to save the $10 million or keep him on the roster in 2021. Before we get started today, I just want to mention you can follow me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. If you haven't already, please make sure to check out the podcast wherever it is that you get your podcast. And last but not least, you can check out the merch, link in the description below. So let's get into it. Should the New York Jets keep or cut Jamison Crowder? Next year, he's going to be 28 years old, and he's on the final year of his contract. He originally signed a 3-year deal, and his first 2 years with the Jets have been pretty solid. His cap hit for 2021, if he's on the roster, would be $11.375 million. Now, if they cut him, they would save $10.375 million, so obviously that's a drastic difference. As of right now, the Jets have $68.7 million in cap space. That would bring that up an additional $10 million. You could also move on from guys like Alex Lewis, Greg Van Roten, Henry Anderson to get that number even higher. Those three seem a lot more likely than Jamison Crowder, but let's talk about it, the pros and the cons, and if they should do it. So last year, he played 12 games for the Jets and was easily the best wide receiver on the team. He had 699 yards, 6 touchdowns in 12 games, which is 58.3 yards per game. Paced out over a full season of 16 games, that would be 933 receiving yards and a couple extra touchdowns tacked on top of that. In 2019, he was really good, 833 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, 52.1 yards per game. Now, something to keep in mind, the Adam Gase offense used the slot a lot. So will he be able to put up those same kind of numbers that he did the last 2 years in this new system in the West Coast offense? Here's a stat that's worth noting from Michael Nania of Jets X Factor. He says that over the last 2 years, Jamison Crowder is 7th in the league in receiving yards from the slot. So he's a top 10 slot receiver. I don't think top 5 might be a stretch, but he is a top half of the league slot receiver. He's probably somewhere in between 5 and 10 if I had to guess and put someone there. But overall, he's a good wide receiver, and the Jets don't have that many good players on offense. So there's your answer. I'm leaning towards keeping him. I don't want to cut him and save the $10 million. Yes, I understand that he's up there in age and not probably a super long-term future answer, but I want to make life as easy for the quarterback as possible next year. Whether that's Sam Darnold, whether it's Zach Wilson, whether it's Justin Fields, whether it's Deshaun Watson, whoever that is, having a slot wide receiver like Jamison Crowder helps that. And it's not like the Jets are strapped for cash. If they had $15 million in cap space and that was all they had, then okay, sure, this is a completely different conversation. And I understand the slot wide receiver class in the 2021 draft looks solid. I get that, but you're hoping that one of those guys turns into a Jamison Crowder. And it's not like Crowder's 34 years old. He's 28. Most wide receivers start to slow down when they're around 30. I'm completely okay with running him back. Like I said, there's no guarantee that the Jets are going to be a playoff team or a contending team next year. So a part of me understands the logic of moving on from someone who has just 1 year left. But don't you want to make either A, it easier to know if Sam Darnold is the guy or not going forward, or help your first year rookie quarterback, or help Deshaun Watson, who, let's face it, wasn't working with a ton of weapons last year. He had Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller for like half the season, but he also had a friend of the show, Chad Hansen, remember him, for like 5 games last year. So just something to keep in mind there. Do they re-sign him after this year? I would probably doubt it, but again, he's not someone who's over 30 years old. He's still just 28 years old, so he's be entering free agency at age 29. I'm all good with that. Mims, Crowder, free agent wide receiver, a mid-round wide receiver player. That's what I think the wide receiver room should look like. Who that free agent wide receiver is, whether it's Allen Robinson, a big name like that, Kenny Golladay, somewhere in that round, or if you go mid-tier option, Curtis Samuel, Corey Davis. I just like as many bodies that can help out this offense as humanly possible. Like, people complain all the time that the Jets offense stinks so badly. Then why are you cutting one of your better offensive players? That doesn't make sense to me. It's not, the $10 million isn't enticing enough for me to do it. And that's just creating yet another need. Like, why are you doing that to yourself right now? You don't have to necessarily worry about that. Maybe you use Braxton Berrios in the 4th or 5th wide receiver role and see if he can develop into a potential slot guy, or you worry about slot in the draft or free agency next year, or you draft someone in the mid rounds this year who can transition into a slot wide receiver full-time in 2022 and beyond. Like, I don't know. Just to me, it doesn't seem to make sense to say, hey, Crowder, you've been the best wide receiver on our team over the last 2 years, but we're really all good and we're going to move on and save that $10 million. For what? It depends. Like, what are you investing that in? I think it's worthwhile to bring him back. It's not someone like who's over the hill. He's coming off probably his best year of his career. If he played the full 16 games, it would have been the best year of his career. And he was really solid last year. I understand that he's not going to have the same kind of production that he did in Adam Gase's offense because they're not going to rely as heavily on him. But he's just a really solid player. Is he elite? He's not an elite player. He's not bad. He's a good quality slot wide receiver. In a team that is not strapped for cash, why not just keep him? Let me know what you think, if the Jets should keep Jamison Crowder or cut Jamison Crowder going into the 2021 season. What would you do? You can follow me on social media, like I said, or subscribe if you are new to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I will talk to you next time.